Hello and welcome to Fantastic Fights, the podcast about a middle-aged man playing adventure game books out loud on the internet. That middle-aged man is me, Hieronymus J. Doom, and this episode we're taking a look at Assassins of Allansia, which was written by Ian Livingstone with art by Robert Ball, which means, thankfully, we've seen the last of Vlado Krizan's wildly inappropriate cartoon artwork in the later fighting fantasy books. I don't really care for the illustrations in this one either, but they're a step up conceptually at least, and Ball's cover art, which shows a menacing figure swathed in blue robes wielding a two-handed scimitar, is pretty good. He's clearly a talented artist, and a glance at his portfolio shows he's got a range of styles. He's a better fit than Vlado Krizan was. I just don't think he's actually a good fit. Assassins of Allansia came out in 2019 from Scholastic Books, making it really quite recent. We are moving ever closer to the present day with these books, which is unsurprising since that's how time works. It's fair to say that some of Ian Livingstone's later books haven't been the most tightly designed or plotted, with many of them being structured like a big long corridor, with very little scope for venturing off the main path. Still, he was responsible for some of my favourite books in the series back in the day, and that buys a lot of goodwill. Now let's take a look at the rules. We are in classic fighting fantasy territory with this one, so there's really not a great deal to say. Skill, stamina and luck are all present and correct. You've got yourself a sword and some leather armour, 10 provisions, and your choice of a potion of skill, stamina or luck. I have rolled up a character I have decided to call Coco Rococo, because that sounds like a suitably heroic name. They have a skill of 10, stamina of 19 and a luck of 9. With luck a little on the low side, I decided to take the potion of luck, which will restore my luck to maximum and increase that maximum by 1 point. Very handy indeed. With all the preliminaries very quickly addressed, let's play Assassins of Allansia. Background. Snake Island is a small, uninhabited island which lies between Dogfish Island and Ghost Island off the west coast of Allansia. It is rugged and inhospitable, and it is said the reason why nobody lives there is because all those who set foot on the island are never seen again. Whether it is the terrifying creatures or undead spirits that claim the lives of visitors, nobody knows. But the rumours about decayers, worm dogs and flesh heads are enough to put most people off from going there. You have been on the island for 2 days, with most of the time spent making a camp and foraging for food. A wager brought you to the island following a chance meeting with an old burly sea captain by the name of Samuel Crow in Port Blacksand, the notorious seaport run by the tyrant Lord Azure. He challenged you to live on the island for a month, with a wager of 20 gold pieces, should you live to collect it. Being a brave adventurer, unafraid of myths or monsters, you accepted his challenge with a shake of the hand. The captain beamed with satisfaction and slapped you on the back, saying you would regret your foolish decision. The next day, he sailed you over to Snake Island on his boat, the Blue Moon. It was a thrilling ride, with huge waves battering the small sailing boat as it bobbed up and down on the ocean swell. Whooping loudly as the sea spray pounded his face, the captain trimmed his sails to get as much speed as he could out of his old boat. I'm starting to think that Samuel Crow might be completely insane. He taunted you most of the way, saying you would survive less than 24 hours, but you ignored the old salt, confident that you would be more than able to deal with any danger the island had to offer. It was mid-afternoon by the time the rocky island appeared on the horizon, and an hour later before the captain finally dropped anchor. "Enjoy yourself," he said sarcastically, ushering you off his boat with a flick of the hand. You jumped into the cold water and waded ashore to a stony beach, littered with driftwood and sun-bleached bones. You were just able to hear the captain above the noise of the waves crashing on the beach. He wished you good luck with a wry grin, saying, "I'll be back in 30 days to pay you, or bury you, unless you've been eaten." You shook your fist at him with a smile and walked off to survey your new surroundings. So I like this as a setup. Again, I do prefer those that throw you straight into the action, and I do prefer the books to at least start with something relatable in terms of motivation, and willing a bet with an insane pirate captain type sounds like a much more relatable way of falling into adventure than being summoned by some tedious monarch to save the day. It soon became apparent how desolate the rocky island was, evil spirits or no evil spirits. The trees were ugly, with bent trunks and gnarled, twisted branches. The thick vegetation was hostile, a tangled mix of needle-sharp thorn bushes and poisonous creepers. A cloud of mosquitoes buzzed around your head, and red ants crawled up your legs, biting you relentlessly. By the end of the day, you had encountered spiders, snakes, scorpions, ticks, grubs, leeches, and other blood-sucking creatures that were going to make your life a misery in the weeks ahead. But, having recently narrowly escaped with your life in Darkwood Forest, the prospect of living on an island didn't seem so bad. It would be a good place to test your survival skills, and hopefully reward you with the 20 gold pieces which you so desperately need. Leaving the stony beach behind, you walked round to the west side of the island to a small sandy beach where you found an abandoned wooden hut nestled between some large boulders. The roof had holes in it and the door was hanging off its hinges, but, with minor repairs, it would be a good place to live for the month. The hut was empty apart from a dented tin jug on a small table made from driftwood and 2 dirty sacks stuffed with old rags, which had once been used as a makeshift bed. You fixed the door and mended the roof as best you could as the light faded. When the sun slipped down below the horizon, the sky became a rich canvas of deep reds, vivid pinks and bright orange. The light quickly faded into total darkness, and there was nothing else to do but to lie down on the sacks and go to sleep. After spending an uncomfortable night as the target for countless mosquitoes, you wake up, soon after dawn, to find your whole body is covered in angry red bites. You spend the morning turning leaves and shells into rainwater traps and collecting dry wood for a fire. In the afternoon you make a chair out of driftwood, fastened together with vines, and a fishing rod made out of a long branch, some twine washed up on the shore, and a hook made out of a button fastening. Using limpets as bait, you manage to catch 2 small fish, which you cook on your campfire in the dying light. Darkness falls, and day 2 ends the same way as day 1, with you trying to get to sleep whilst being eaten alive by mosquitoes. And that is the background. So, very intriguing. What could this island hold? I guess we're going to find out. Also, just a good workout for some of Ian Livingstone's best features as a writer. This kind of adventure stuff, grounded in a sense of realism, is a thing he's really good at, and I think this is an excellent example of it. It's really nicely written. I didn't have much to say whilst I was reading the introduction, purely on the basis that it's just doing a really good job. So, strong opening from Mr. Livingstone. Section 1. The wind picks up during the night on the back of a rumbling storm which rolls in from the west. Heavy rain turns into a torrential downpour and beats down noisily on the roof. Rainwater finds its way through your roof repairs and drips down onto the floorboards. You hear strange noises coming from outside, with the howling wind playing tricks on your imagination in the pitch-black darkness. The storm eventually passes and you finally drift off to sleep. But in the middle of the night you suddenly wake up with a start. The wind has dropped and you can hear the sound of waves breaking on the beach. But you hear another sound much closer, a tiny squeak, and one which you recognise. Somebody is trying to open the door. Who could it be? Nobody else lives on this forsaken island. It's too dark to see anything You stand up slowly, sword in hand and heart pounding, hardly daring to breathe. Do you want to stand still where you are or go outside to investigate? Ooh, decisions. I think I'm going to stay where I am, ready to confront whoever or whatever comes through the door. You feel a draft of cool air on your face, caused by the door opening and quickly closing again. You hear a floorboard creak, which confirms that someone has entered the hut. Do you want to call out to whoever it might be, or do you want to toss a coin on the floor to distract the intruder? I'm going to toss a coin on the floor to distract the intruder. My reasoning is that if the intruder means me harm, it will be a good distraction to enable me to get my sword into them. If they don't mean me harm or are simply unaware that there's anyone in the cabin, then making that small noise will presumably cause them to declare themselves. So yeah, we'll toss a coin. The coin lands on the floor and you hear soft footsteps, followed by the dull sound of a blade slashing at your bedding several times. Whoever it is, they are trying their best to kill you in your sleep. Do you want to swing your sword in the direction of the intruder or run outside? It's pitch black in here. I'm going to take the opportunity to run outside and hope that there's a little bit more light that will allow me to see and fight to my full ability. The intruder hears your footsteps and swings his long knife in your direction, slicing your arm with the tip of the blade. Lose 2 stamina points. Stamina now 17. You turn to defend yourself and must fight the agile knife fighter in total darkness. The knife fighter has a skill of 7 and a stamina of 8. I don't remember seeing any rules for fighting in the dark, so I think this is a straightforward battle, and one which we will do now by rolling some dice. I have defeated the knife fighter. The knife fighter managed to land 1 lucky blow on me, reducing my stamina to 15. I'm therefore going to whip out the Breville and make myself a quick cheese and ham toasty to return my stamina to 19. My provisions are now 9. Breathing hard after the desperate fight, you think about who your attacker might be, but no, you will have to wait for the morning light to find out. Not wishing to spend time in the company of a corpse, you decide to sleep on the beach. Thankfully, the rest of the night passes without incident, and you are relieved to see dawn finally break. You go back to the hut, where you find the body of a skinny man. 2 long knives lie on the ground beside him. He has a dark moustache, a pointed beard, and a thin, crooked nose. His clothing is shazari, loose-fitting black robes and black leggings, and a headdress made of a long black scarf wrapped around his head. His only jewellery is a silver necklace and pendant with a scorpion etching on it, which you take and put in your pocket. The first of what I assume will be many small knickknacks and gewgaws that Ian Livingstone will provide for us in this story. You also take one of the daggers from the crossbelt slung around his neck. You wonder why he came to the island to kill you. Did someone hire him to do it? If so, why? For now, there is no answer. Do you want to search through the knife fighter's clothing, or would you rather begin your daily quest for food? No, we'll rummage through his clothing. You find a small circular brass box with a hinged lid, concealed in a hidden pocket inside the knife fighter's robes. There is a silver ring inside the box. Do you want to try it on? I mean, it feels like a trap, but at the same time, I do want to try it on. If it was a useful ring, surely he'd be wearing it just generally. Unless he was planning to propose, which would be a bit macabre. I'm just going to go and do a little quick murder, and then when I get back, I'm going to propose to my beloved. Yeah, we're going to put it on. Of course we're going to put it on. The ring fits perfectly on your middle finger. Minutes later, it begins to feel very tight on your finger. You try to take it off, but are unable to do so. It continues to tighten, causing your finger to turn purple and go completely numb. There was a reason why your attacker was not wearing the ring, and now there is nothing you can do to take it off. The ring is cursed. Lose 1 skill point, 1 stamina point, and 2 luck points. So, skill now reduced to 9. Stamina now reduced to 18. And luck now reduced to 7. That's a fair enough trap. I think I knew on some level that it was going to be a trap. I'd already puzzled out that if it was any good, he'd have been wearing it, so I have no one to blame but myself on that score. Onwards. You fill the tin jug with water from the rainwater traps outside and can't stop thinking about the attempt on your life. After quenching your thirst, you decide to go in search of food. You are very hungry, having eaten only a little bit of fish the previous day. Lose 1 stamina point. You are very hungry, having eaten only a bit of fish the previous day. Lose 1 stamina point. Stamina now 17. If you want to go fishing again, you can, or you can explore the island for food. Well, fishing didn't work last time, so I think we will explore the island. Picking your way through the thick undergrowth, you see a tall bush with lots of ripe red berries hanging from the branches. Do you want to eat the berries? I think we'll eat the berries. No, yes. Oh, this is proving a challenge. Yeah, I'm going to eat the berries. Why not? The berries taste quite bitter, but you are hungry and eat several handfuls of them. You set off again, and it isn't long before you begin to feel unwell. You lean against a tree and are violently ill. The red berries are poisonous. Lose 1 skill point. Skill now 8, and roll 1 die and reduce your stamina by the number rolled. So, how much stamina did we lose? 6, of course we lose 6. Stamina now 11. Also, why am I looking for food? I've literally got 10 provisions. Yep, classic example of failing to take the actual rules of the game into consideration. So, I didn't even need to eat the berries. I can just eat 2 portions of provisions, a packet of cheesy Wotsits, and a bag of pear drops will soon see me absolutely right. That restores 8 points of stamina, taking me back up to 19. Still, on we go. You pass a dead tree devoid of bark and leaves where a skeleton hand is hanging on a rusty nail hammered into the trunk. The bones are well weathered, dark ochre in colour, and look to have been hanging on the nail for years. Do you want to lift the disembodied hand off the nail, or would you rather leave it where it is? What possible utility could I get out of a disembodied hand? I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to leave it exactly where it is. This is, so far, despite the first and only fight being pretty much a walkover, this is quite a deadly book. You set off again, picking a path through the thick undergrowth, wondering what other strange things you might discover on the creepy island. It's not long before you find out. An unpleasant smell suddenly fills your nostrils, a foul stench like rotten eggs. There is a strange mound in front of you, something that resembles a huge lump of green wax. Suddenly, it moves, rising up slowly on its trunk-like legs. It is a huge creature with an enormous oval head and tiny sunken eyes, 2 small holes for a nose, and a gaping, fanged mouth from which drool dribbles down its multi-layered chin. He paints a vivid picture. It is covered with open sores which ooze thick, yellow pus, which trickles down its bloated body like melting candle wax. A swarm of flies buzzes around the creature, landing on it to feed on the stinking excretions. The creature's noxious smell makes you lightheaded, and you start to feel dizzy. Do you want to stand your ground and fight the Decayer, or would you rather flee? There is a picture of the Decayer. It's actually genuinely pretty good. I'm going to say pretty good. Big barrel-shaped lad, with fangs and tusks, very darkly rendered, kind of like the member of the Swamp Thing family the other Swamp Things don't like to talk about. Yeah, pretty good. Do I want to fight it or do I want to flee? I mean, it sounds like it's going to be quite the challenging battle, so I think fleeing is the option. The Decayer spits at you as you run past it. Test your luck. So, with my luck of 7, let us see how we go. Ooh, exactly 7. So, my luck reduced to 6, but I am lucky, and I am actually going to skull my potion of luck in order to return my luck to maximum and add 1 to it, giving me a luck of 10. A thick glob of drool flies past your head, just missing you. You do not stop to look back as you run through the undergrowth as fast as you can. You reach the east side of the island in less than an hour, emerging from the undergrowth onto a rocky open area which ends at the edge of a cliff. There is a beach below, and you notice a cave entrance at the base of the cliff. There are some rough stone steps leading down to the beach. Do you want to walk down the steps and enter the cave, or would you rather wait to see if there is any sign of life inside the cave? I think we'll adopt a wait-and-see strategy. This is already extremely linear. This is classic late-stage Ian Livingstone, just a series of encounters in a line. They're nice encounters. They're always nice encounters. That's one of the things that is still very enjoyable to me with an Ian Livingstone book. He creates good, fun, interesting encounters, but he just arranges them in a line, it seems. You keep your eyes on the cave, but nothing emerges from the entrance. You are about to go down the steps when you hear a rustling sound in the undergrowth behind you. You spin round to see a large humanoid creature charging straight at you with its clawed hands outstretched. Its large head is totally devoid of skin, the skull blood red, and its protruding eyeballs and long pointed teeth hideously exposed. The repulsive beast is a seldom seen creature of chaos known as a flesh head. Ironic, given that its head is entirely devoid of flesh. Roll 2 dice. Is the total less than your skill, or indeed equal to it? So we should be alright. Skill of 8. Yep, we roll a 6. That is fine. You just manage to sidestep out of the path of the oncoming flesh head, which flies at full speed over the edge of the cliff. It lands head first on the jagged rocks below and is killed instantly. You walk rapidly down the stone steps to the beach below, where you find a large ruby set in the navel of the flesh head. Add 1 luck point. You prize it out without any fuss and pocket the gem before walking over to the mouth of the cave. So, we've got a ruby. Irritatingly, our luck is already at maximum, so that doesn't help. But yeah, that went reasonably well as an encounter. You peer inside the gloomy cave and see a coil of rope hanging on a rusty iron peg just inside the entrance. You look up and see hundreds of black bats hanging upside down from the ceiling. There isn't much light, just enough to see what looks like a small wooden cupboard mounted on the wall at the back of the cave. Do you want to take the rope, or would you rather walk over to the cupboard at the back of the cave? I mean, rope is a classic bit of adventuring kit. I'm going to take the rope. You sling the coil of rope over your shoulder and walk over to the cupboard at the back of the cave. The cupboard door is slightly ajar. You open it further with the tip of your sword and see a crimson glazed clay pot with a cracked lid. Do you want to lift the lid off the pot, or would you rather not touch it and instead look around the cave? No, in for a penny, in for a pound. I think we're kind of committed on this run to doing all of the stupid things, so we're going to look at the interior of the pot, I think. It's a strange way of me to phrase it. You lift the lid to find a small iron key with the number 44 stamped on it. Oh, what a classic! What an absolute classic. You see, it is a skeleton key, which will open most locks. Add 1 luck point. Pleased with your find, you pocket the key and look around the cave. There is a pile of stones in a dark recess in the cave wall. You remove the top layer and uncover a wooden chest with ornate brass hinges. You pick up the chest and carry it to the mouth of the cave to examine it in the daylight. The lid is inlaid with a skull and crossbones motif made of mother of pearl. The chest does not appear to be locked. Do you want to open the chest, or would you rather scour the beach? I feel as though opening the chest would be really pushing my luck, but I've decided that's what Coco Rococo does. That is how Coco Rococo rolls. They are someone who believes in pushing their luck to the absolute limit. So we're going to open the box. You hear a faint click when you lift up the lid. You flinch, half expecting a poison dart to shoot out, but nothing happens. Inside the chest you find a leather purse tied shut and a small silver box. So, what do we want to do? Open the leather purse, open the silver box, or head off? We'll open the leather purse. That seems like the least problematic of the two items. You shake the purse and hear what sounds like coins rattling inside. You loosen the leather string tie and empty out 12 gold pieces onto the palm of your hand. Add 1 luck point. You happily pocket the coins and decide what to do. If you have not done so already, you can either open the silver box or close the chest and scour the beach in the hope of finding something of interest. So, 12 gold pieces. So we're definitely going to open the silver box as well, because why not at this point? You shake the silver box and hear something rattle inside. You open it up and find 2 small sparkling diamonds. Add 1 luck point. Luck still maximum. You close the lid and put the box in your pocket. There are also 2 small corked bottles in the chest. One is a clear glass bottle containing red ink. The other is a brown bottle with a label on it with the words worm paste handwritten in faded red ink. Is that paste for treating worms or a paste made out of worms? Because one of those is really useful, potentially, if I get invaded by some kind of parasite, which is more than possible given the state of this island. And the other one is much less helpful. I don't particularly fancy eating some worm paste. But anyway, we'll take them with us and see what is to be done with them, if anything. So now all we have left to do is scour the beach. A search of the beach yields a silver coin buried in the sand and a rusty old knife which you find in a rock pool. You put the items in your pocket and look out to sea to spot a barrel bobbing up and down which appears to be attached to the seabed by a rope or chain. I'm not sure why I'm taking a rusty knife when I already have a perfectly serviceable and brand new dagger that I got from the knife fighter, but hey. Do you want to swim out to the barrel, or would you rather climb back up the stone steps to the top of the cliff? Out to the barrel we go. You leave your possessions on the beach and swim out to the sea with your knife gripped between your teeth. The water is cold, but the current isn't very strong, and you are able to swim towards the barrel without much effort. You are about 15 metres away from it when you see something moving towards you on the surface of the water. The huge, fanged jaw of a sea creature suddenly opens up in front of you. It is a giant sea snake, some 10 metres long, and you must fight it with your knife. Reduce your skill by 2 points for this battle. The sea snake has a skill of 7 and a stamina of 7. I have a fighting skill of 6 and a stamina of 19. I think I should still win. Might need to spend some luck, though. With that said, I'm going to roll some dice. I have defeated the giant sea snake. I took no damage, and I expended a single point of luck to defeat it. So my luck is now 9. The water around you is blood red. The sea snake's lifeless body floats slowly away on the current, leaving you free to swim over to the barrel. It is an old oak cask which is secured to the seabed by a rusty chain. You are unable to remove the chain from the barrel, but you are able to prise off the wooden lid with your knife. You see a bronze shield, verdigris in colour, lying in a few inches of water at the bottom of the barrel. Do you want to swim back to the shore with the shield? I surely do. Back on dry land, you slip your hand inside the leather straps on the back of the shield. You feel a sudden surge of power run up your arm. You have found the Shield of the Sentinels. Add 1 skill point and 1 luck point. Pleased with your new piece of armour, you gather up your belongings and climb back up the stone steps to the top of the cliff. So, luck now at 10, which is its maximum, and skill improved to 9, which is really good news. You are about to head back to your hut on the other side of the island when you hear a loud roar above you, like the sound of flames being fanned by giant bellows. You look up to see a fire dragon swooping down to land on the open space where you are standing. Do you want to run for cover or stand your ground and fight the giant fire-breathing creature? There is a picture of the dragon. It is, I would say, okay. Yeah, it's fine. It's clearly a dragon. It looks like a dragon. It's just a little bit basic, I would say, as an illustration. It looks a lot like, I'm pretty certain it's a digital illustration as well. Yeah, the brushes used seem to be quite thick and meaty. Again, there's nothing wrong with it per se, it's just not particularly inspiring. It looks like a bargain basement dragon at best. Well, I've no interest in standing my ground. I'm going to run for the hills. The giant scarlet-covered dragon catches sight of you and swoops down to blast you with its fiery breath. Are you carrying a shield? I am. You raise your shield to ward off the flames shooting down from the sky. The flames are repelled, but the shield becomes red-hot to the touch and burns the back of your arm. Lose 1 stamina point. Stamina now 18. The dragon glides down to land on the edge of the cliff where you are standing, its gigantic clawed feet aimed directly at you. Do you want to thrust your sword at the dragon as it attempts to land or run for cover? Let's go for thrusting the sword, I think. I don't really want my shield to get any hotter than it already is. The dragon is covered with red iron-like scales which look too thick to penetrate with your sword, so you aim your blow at its clawed feet which are just above your head. Roll 2 dice. Is the total equal or less than your skill? 7. It is less than my skill. There is a satisfying dull thud as the keen edge of your sword bites into the sinews and bones of the dragon's left foot. The giant beast roars in pain and flaps its wings frantically, trying to lift itself back up into the sky. It flies off east, roaring loudly. You watch it shrink to a tiny speck on the horizon before sheathing your sword. You look around and see half of the dragon's foot, which was sheared off by your sword, lying on the ground. Dragon claws command high prices in Port Blacksand, and you cut off 2 claws, hoping one day to sell them to an armourer to make exotic weapons. Pleased with your treasure, you head back towards your hut on the other side of the island. So many objects already. You hack your way through the undergrowth, being careful not to brush against the poison-tipped creepers. You hear the sound of buzzing overhead and look up to see a swarm of bees fly out of their hive high in a tree. Do you want to climb the tree to see if you can find some honey, or would you rather press on to get back to your hut? I've still got 7 provisions. I'm going to press on back to my hut, thanks. I'll leave the honey to the bees. You manage to trace your path back to the beach on the west side of Snake Island and are quite relieved to see your hut again. You are about to go inside when you see a boat moored up on the beach. It's the Blue Moon, the same boat that brought you to the island. Captain Crow is on board, standing on deck. He looks anxious when you approach him, but says nothing. When you call out to him, he doesn't reply, but his eyes dart right several times, as though he is trying to warn you about something. A quick glance left solves the mystery. Crouched down in the shadows of a large rock is a hooded figure in leather armour, holding a loaded bow aimed straight at you. You hear a faint twang as the arrow is released from the bow. Are you carrying a shield? I am indeed. There is a picture of the captain stood on deck. What's really nice about this is that the eyes have been rendered looking over to the right, and the line of his scimitar or cutlass points to a small hidden figure with a bow just in the bottom left-hand side of the frame. This is, I think, probably the best picture we've had so far. I genuinely think it's really good. The pirate captain looks great, and the sort of almost hidden figure with the bow is really nicely rendered. It's just a great bit of narrative art. You raise your arm just in time as the piercing arrow clatters into your shield and ricochets away. Your assailant reloads and fires again, but you manage to deflect the second arrow. With your sword drawn, you charge at your attacker, who throws back her hood to reveal the unmistakable features of a dark elf priestess. Her neck is covered with tattoos of writhing serpents, and her long, ice-white hair is tied up high on her head. She is wearing studded leather armour with iron-plated shoulder pads. Very 80s. Staring at you with cold, amethyst-blue eyes, she draws her longsword slowly from its scabbard, a shimmering blade made of the finest Salamonian steel, enveloped in a swirling mist of vivid colours. He's good at the old writing sometimes, Ian Livingstone, he really is. Swinging it skillfully above her head, the dark elf advances towards you, meeting your sword with a clash of steel, her chilling war cry sending a shiver down your spine. The dark elf priestess has a skill of 8 and a stamina of 8. I'm going to roll some dice. I have defeated the dark elf priestess. With blood trickling from her mouth, the dark elf still manages a contemptuous smile and says in her dying breath, "I might have failed, but one of our guild will see you dead." With that, her head slumps to one side and she falls silent. You notice that she is wearing the same silver necklace and scorpion pendant as the bearded man who tried to kill you the previous night. You snatch it from her neck and put it in your pocket. "Bravo!" you hear a voice call out cheerfully. You turn and walk over to the Blue Moon, where you find Captain Crow chained to the mast. "That was impressive. I never thought you'd get the better of Oleander Redfly. Now, if you don't mind, would you please release me from these wretched chains? The key is in there," he says, pointing at a wooden box on the foredeck. After freeing the captain, you ask him why people are trying to kill you. You show him the pendants and tell him about last night's attempt on your life. "That would have been Tarak Kazan. He's an assassin," he says matter-of-factly. "Kazan won the right to have the first chance to assassinate you." The captain sees the puzzled expression on your face and begins a detailed account of what has happened to him since he left you to fend for yourself on Snake Island. He recounts how he sailed back to Port Blacksand, where he saw wanted posters plastered all over the city with a drawing of your face on them and a bounty of 1,000 gold pieces being offered by Lord Azur for your head. The captain foolishly told the innkeeper at the Rusty Anchor, where he was staying, that you had been sailing with him earlier that day. The innkeeper grunted as though uninterested, but the next morning the captain was hauled away by Imperial guards to Lord Azur's palace to face his cruel interrogators. "Threatened with torture," he says, "I had no option but to tell the pig-faced brutes I knew where you were. As soon as Lord Azur found out, he stormed into the room and started screaming at me, kicking me for helping a prime suspect leave Port Blacksand. Whether or not it was true, his spies had told him that you had killed his master, Zanbar Bone. Now, I'm no fan of Zanbar Bone, and I say good riddance to the Demon Prince, but what was I supposed to do? I had no choice but to tell him that I'd taken you to Snake Island. When he finished kicking me, Azur sent for his best assassins from the notorious Scorpion Guild of Assassins to hunt you down. Kazan and Redfly might be dead, but there will be more assassins coming after you, I'm afraid." I watched them coolly draw straws to decide who would go first to hunt you down. Tarek Kazan drew the longest straw and set off immediately. As we know, he didn't return with your head. The next day I was forced to sail back to Snake Island with Oleander Redfly on board as the next assassin in line to kill you. She boasted that she had assassinated many hapless victims and you would be next. But clearly she was wrong, the captain says with gusto. So I guess this is intended to be a direct sequel to The Port of Peril, potentially with the same character. That's kind of cool. The problem we now have, says the captain, is that since Redfly will not return to the palace with your head this evening, Azura will send out his next assassin to claim the bounty. He might even be impatient enough to send them all out at once to hunt you down. On our voyage here, Redfly said she was lucky to go second, as the assassins following her were the meanest, cruelest, and most brutal assassins in all Allansia. I really feared for your life when she told me about a couple of them, particularly an ex-mercenary fighter called Garanka Vassell. His speciality is removing a victim's head from their shoulders with one swipe of his two-handed sword. I've never seen a more mean-looking brute. He had a dent in his skull caused by a warhammer blow. Also had a mouthful of gold teeth. We should leave Snake Island soon before Vassal pays us a visit. But I don't think now is the right time to be going to sea. Look, there's a storm brewing, the captain says, pointing to the darkening sky. What do you want to do? You want to spend another night on the island or tell Captain Crow to set sail immediately? Well, he's the expert sailor, so I will follow his sage advice and spend another night on the island. The captain helps you gather wood to make a fire and produces some salted beef and dried fruit from his boat, just in case you're hungry, he says with a grin, handing you the food. You enjoy a fine meal, keeping warm by the fire and talking to the captain about Lord Azur. Add 2 stamina points. Stamina now 18. It begins to rain hard, and with a cold wind whipping up, you retire to the hut for the night, taking it in turns to be on watch in case of unexpected visitors. You wake early in the next morning to find the sun shining through the windows to the sound of waves gently lapping on the beach. The captain is already on his boat, checking his gear and filling a barrel with fresh rainwater. A good breeze and a calm sea bodes well for a quick passage to the mainland. I'm just going to see if I can find a piece of wood to make a new tiller for the rudder, the captain says on seeing you. The old one is split and we don't want to be out at sea without being able to steer the boat. I'll be back soon. The captain heads off, leaving you to gather up your possessions, including Oleander Redfly's bow and quiver of arrows, which all have flights made of black feathers. You also take Redfly's prized weapon, her shimmering astral sword. Add 1 skill point. Skill now back to 10. An hour passes, but the captain has still not returned, so you decide to go in search of him. You follow his footprints deep into the undergrowth, and it isn't long before you find him. His limbs are held fast by thick vines, and the poor man is in terrible pain, caused by a long tendril thrust down his throat. He has fallen foul of hell's bloodwort, a giant carnivorous plant. The bloodwort snares its victims with its long vines, which wrap around limbs like giant snakes, making escape virtually impossible. With its prey unable to move, a bloodwort will force its long, proboscis-like tendril down a victim's throat to suck their blood from inside their body. The terrified captain appears doomed, and his muffled screams turn your blood cold. Do you want to attack the bloodwort to rescue the captain, or run back to the beach? He saved my life. I really can't abandon him. We will attack the bloodwort. You draw your sword and launch yourself at the giant carnivorous plant, hacking furiously at its proboscis. The fibrous texture is tough to cut through, and poor Captain Crow howls in agony each time you strike it. You finally manage to cleave through it, causing the vines to loosen their iron-like grip on the captain. You extract the proboscis from the captain's throat, but there is nothing you can do to save him. Whilst burying the captain, you see the proboscis of another bloodwort creeping towards you, which you skewer with your sword. You walk back to the beach, deep in thought. and inadvertently step on a nest of giant fire ants. Hundreds of ants swarm up your legs and sting you multiple times, injecting you with poisonous venom. Yeah, stuff is certainly happening in this story. Plenty of stuff is happening. Lose 2 stamina points. Stamina now 16 again. Easy come, easy go. You run back to the beach as fast as you can, picking up a piece of wood on your way to replace the broken tiller. Still covered in ants, you wade straight out to sea to wash them off before jumping on board the Blue Moon. It doesn't take long to repair the broken tiller and, job done, you let out the mainsail and cast off. You soon get used to sailing the Blue Moon, and with a calm sea and a good breeze you make good headway. Snake Island is soon no more than a speck behind you on the horizon. The sun is shining brightly and feels good on your face. The Blue Moon carves its way gently through the blue waters, and you feel like there's nowhere else you'd rather be. Whilst enjoying the moment, you know that you need to make a plan and decide your destination. Should you sail east to Red River to escape from the assassins, or should you sail back to Port Blacksand to confront Lord Azur? Your thinking is interrupted when you see a large wooden ship sailing towards you from the east. As it draws closer, you see that it has a single mast supporting a large square-rigged sail with cannons sticking out on both sides of the hull. A black flag on its stern confirms your fear that a pirate ship is heading your way. There is no way you can outrun the ship, and you have to think quickly about how best to avoid being captured. Do you want to let the mainsail go loose and lie down on the deck, pretending to be dead in the hope the pirates will have no interest in you? Or do you want to jump into the sea and hide behind the boat? I don't particularly want to jump into the sea. That strikes me as a plan that potentially leaves me in the sea with no boat. So we're going to pretend to be dead, I guess. The pirate ship is closing in on the Blue Moon, and you let go of the rope to let the sail flap as though the boat is adrift. The pirates will be eager to find out if you have anything worth stealing, and your pretending to be dead might not deter them from finding out. Do you possess a bottle of red ink? I do indeed. You think that the best way to put the pirates off from coming on board the Blue Moon is to make them believe that you have died of plague, something that they would not want to catch. You uncork the bottle and quickly mark your face with red ink, highlighting your insect bites to make them look like large open sores caused by deadly smallpox. You lie down on the deck and keep perfectly still as the pirate ship comes alongside. You hear voices discussing what should be done with you. A loud, gruff voice, probably that of the captain, barks out an order. "One of you dogs jump on board that boat and toss the body in the sea. Tie a rope to the boat and we'll tow it to Port Blacksand and sell it." You dare to open your eyes a fraction and see a scrawny-looking pirate standing on a plank ready to dive into the sea. He suddenly stops in his tracks and says, "If I board that boat, we're all going to die. The dead body is covered with pox. I know plague when I see it." You hear the captain order his men to set sail immediately and watch the pirate ship sail away. Moments later, you see a gigantic tentacle rise out of the sea, no more than 20 metres from the pirate ship. Another tentacle rises out of the sea, then another, and another, until there are 8 tentacles towering over the ship. They belong to a giant monster from the depths of the sea, which has a huge squid-like body, 2 massive eyes, and a beaked mouth. The ship is about to be attacked by a kraken. You hear booming explosions from the ship's cannon as 2 cannonballs whistle through the air towards the kraken, one of them finding its mark and taking a big chunk out of one of the tentacles. The sea monster thrashes around in the sea and wraps 2 of its giant tentacles around the ship's mast, pulling the ship over. There is chaos on board as the kraken slowly pulls the ship over on its side, causing everything on deck that is not lashed down to spill overboard. There is nothing the pirates can do to defeat the kraken, and you hear them cry for help as they jump into the sea. You watch on in horror as the pirate ship disappears below the waves and the rest of the crew with it. You trim the Blue Moon's flapping sail and set a course away from the sea monster, sailing due east towards the Red River estuary. So, there was a moment where I thought we might have a choice of where to land, Red River or Port Blacksand, but no, that has been taken away from us in favour of the tried and tested technique of just having us go in the one direction he's come up with. It's kind of a fun book, it's just not super interactive. Apart from the blood sharks circling you at one point, the voyage to the mainland passes without incident. A strong easterly breeze speeds up the journey, and a few hours later the rugged Allansian coastline comes into view. The cliffs are quite high, but you see an estuary directly ahead, which you know to be the entrance to Red River. It's not long before you are at the mouth of the river, where you see 2 wooden buildings on the northern bank. You steer the Blue Moon over to the bank, jump out and tie it up onto a small dock. Feels good to be back on dry land, but you are also very aware that Lord Azur will not rest until one of his assassins has delivered your head to him. If only Captain Crow had told you who the other assassins were before he died, you would be better prepared. Now, you suspect everyone you meet could be one of Azur's assassins. But at least you should recognise Garanka Vassal when you see him, if not the other assassins. You walk towards the buildings, which you see are a boatyard and a general store. Thinking you might be able to get some gold by selling the Blue Moon, you decide to visit the boatyard first. And upon that visit, I think we will call a halt. We've done a decent chunk of the plot in terms of getting off the island and finding what the real plot is, which isn't spend a month living on an island, but is try not to die of assassins. I am enjoying it, but I just wish that every once in a while at this point he would just create multiple paths through a location. It's so linear. It's so very linear. That is probably going to bother me a bit less when I'm playing it on my own time, because I can just sort of settle down and enjoy the narrative a bit more when it's my own time I'm wasting. But yeah, it is weird because his early books didn't have this propensity to be as straight as an arrow, aside, I guess, from Caverns of the Snow Witch. But anyway, I am going to go and play the book on my own time. I'm having a nice enough time with it. It really helps that he's a good writer. That softens the blow of the linearity considerably in my book. I'm going to play it. I'm doubtless going to enjoy it. I'll be back for you in just a few moments with some closing remarks. Tatty bye. I have finished Assassins of Allansia. It's actually a really interesting book to think about. Almost, but not quite a return to form for Ian Livingstone, and probably my favourite book he's done in a little while. It's following the same kind of design philosophy as Port of Peril, but for my money it manages to be the more compelling of the 2 books. Part of my reason for feeling warmly towards Assassins of Allansia might be that my first playthrough wound up being almost the perfect failed attempt. Traditionally, my approach is to die suddenly as soon as I pause the recording, but in this case I managed to get through a decent chunk of the book, and whether by luck or judgment, the adventure wound up feeling quite thrilling. I died, poisoned by an assassin pretending to be a ferryman, just before the grand finale in Fang. Death by assassin feels like the most appropriate way to lose a book called Assassins of Allansia. It wasn't just my final fate that felt oddly satisfying. The journey to get to that point was also highly enjoyable. By the end, I'd burned through all of my provisions, a hell of a lot of luck, and seen my skill jump up and down like a footballer getting ready to be subbed in during the closing minutes of a key game. This is the fighting fantasy system working at its best. All 3 stats were treated as a resource, and the slow diminution of those resources as the story progressed created a wonderful sense of escalating peril. The fights were generally entirely manageable at my skill level, but not so easy that they didn't slowly chip away at my stamina. There are a few tough fights sprinkled through the text, but only one of them is strictly required, and you don't actually have to win it so much as survive it. I think part of the reason my first playthrough went down so well is luck. I don't think for a moment that Ian Livingstone sat down and crunched the numbers, and it was definitely lucky that my stats were pretty much perfect to interact with the game systems. But I do think Livingstone has grasped that scaling back the difficulty of most fights while throwing in the odd murder beast is the best way to encourage people to play the game honestly. It's nice to play a fighting fantasy book that doesn't feel as though you need to cheat to win. It's also worth noting that this is one of the few books where playing the game as written with regard to gaining skill feels appealing. There's so many ways to lose skill points here, but an equal number of ways to gain them as well, which means that not being able to exceed your starting skill value doesn't matter as much. I think I got my skill as low as 8 at one juncture, and that made finding items that could restore my skill and also mitigate future skill loss still feel impactful. Usually, finding a magical sword, or whatever, at maximum skill is always tinged with frustration, but here I knew there was every chance that I'd lose another skill point in the future, and that meant that I still felt pleased because the magic sword would act against that. It turns out that handing out skill penalties stops feeling nearly so bad if you do it a whole bunch and are equally cavalier with handing out the bonuses. It starts feeling more like luck or stamina. I think that's probably a good thing overall. In terms of the design approach, there's nothing very new here. Ian Livingstone has found a way that he feels comfortable writing, and if you don't get on with his quirks, then I don't think Assassins of Allansia is going to change your mind in the slightest. As usual, it's quite a linear affair, especially at the beginning, but it does open up a little as the adventure progresses. Indeed, the island opening is probably the part that feels most confining. There's very little in the way of options for taking different paths, and for me it's the weakest section of the book by far. The encounters themselves are fine. It all feels a little aimless, and the book only really starts coming alive once you discover that there's a whole bunch of assassins on your trail. At that point, it really does come alive, to be fair, and I'm not sure there was much gained by having you prattling about on an island for 2 days, getting into unrelated scrapes. Once you get out onto the open sea, things feel a lot more satisfying. It's still quite linear, but a lot more options open up for different ways to approach the different areas. The business with the pirate ship, for example, has quite a lot of granular detail, and I really appreciated that you can experience the Kraken attack from a few different vantage points. You can take a swift detour to Port Blacksand, which turns out to be full of people who would be only too delighted to murder you in exchange for a sack of gold. The big beats of the story are very much fixed in place, but you do get a certain amount of freedom within that structure, and it's an approach I don't mind. You get the benefits of being able to impose a narrative structure on the action while still preserving a degree of agency for the player. If you're going to take this approach, then it lives or dies on the quality of the story that is being told, and this brings us to my favourite thing about the book. I just think the premise is really good. Being hunted by a bunch of weird assassins as you try and hunt down the man who sent them on your tail feels like something right out of a high-concept action movie. If there were any fighting fantasy book I'd like to see adapted into a movie or comic, it would surely be this one. The assassins are an ever-present threat, and there's plenty of them. Unlucky 13, in fact, which is a nice little detail. Each of the assassins feels distinct, like a proper character, and there's a variety on display from those who wield magic or poison to more straightforward warriors and berserkers. All of them feel like they have a backstory to them, and the quality of the writing really elevates them into one of the most interesting sets of antagonists in fighting fantasy for some time. It reminds me a bit of The Way of the Tiger, where one of the big strengths of that setting was that the NPCs all had a history to them. Added to this, the fact that anyone could potentially be an assassin adds a little frisson of danger to every interaction you have with an NPC. Narratively speaking, it makes for a very engaging middle section of the book. It does kind of fall over a bit once you get to Fang, which is a shame. It doesn't feel like much of a climax, even though the final ending is very clever. Rather than finish with a big pile of gold or the thanks of a grateful nation, the very end sees you heading into Baron Succumvit's latest iteration of Death Trap Dungeon in order to get Lord Azur to drop the price on your head. It's a lovely way to conclude the adventure on a much darker note than we've been used to, and with a considerable degree of ambiguity about your eventual fate. There is something wonderful about having the confidence to finish the story in the middle and leave the audience to fill in the gaps, and I very much enjoyed doing the callback to Trial of Champions rather than having another excursion into the Deadly Dungeon itself. It's something of a pity that the setup doesn't match the payoff. Once you arrive at Fang, there's basically nothing to do except have a quick chat with Lord Azur and beg for your life in a decidedly non-heroic way. It's an odd way to finish a genuinely enjoyable adventure full of near-death struggles with murderous assassins. It's a bit like if John Wick had ended up with the main character interviewing for an entry-level admin job at the council. It feels very much as if Ian Livingstone ran out of sections and wasn't prepared to either go over section count or revise anything that he'd already written. This book is crying out for one big set piece to finish strong on. If I were an editor, I'd be strongly suggesting that the prattling about on the island could have been trimmed back in order to get to the premise of the book more efficiently, and then that would have freed up some space to add a big action sequence where you try, and indeed ultimately fail, to kill Lord Azur, leading into the excellent ending where you wind up doing Trial of the Champions as a last desperate Hail Mary to save your skin. The other thing the ending does is ask you how many assassins you have offed on your travels. In order to survive to face the Trial of Champions, you must have killed every single assassin between Snake Island and Fang, all 13 of them. This means that there's very much only one true path to victory. I have conflicted feelings about this. On the one hand, having to take out all the assassins makes narrative sense. You don't want to be leaving professional murderers on your tail after all. It's also extremely satisfying hunting down all the assassins through the book, and none of them are especially difficult to find in isolation. I think the first time I got to the end I'd found 9 of the 13, and the second time I'd found 11, but between the 2 failed runs I'd actually hit all 13 assassins, and after that it was just a case of checking to see which 2 I'd skipped on the second run and adding them back into the final route. My heart did sink a little bit when I realised I was going to have to kill every single assassin. I think I started having flashbacks to Blood of the Zombies and the absolute hell of trying to kill every single zombie in that game. Fortunately, finding all 13 assassins is nothing like so much of a chore as finding all 400 zombies. My issue with finding and killing all the assassins isn't really mechanical, it's more that there's a couple of them where you have to do something clearly stupid in order to find them. I mentioned earlier that going to Port Blacksand is clearly signposted as a foolish move. Not only is your wanted poster up on every street corner of Lord Azur's city, but the locals have a well-deserved reputation for skullduggery, which means that everyone you meet is going to be quite keen on the idea of stabbing you for cash. Turning up to Port Blacksand feels like a mistake within the story, and the text does a decent job of explaining why it's a mistake. Similarly, there's a pair of dwarves who don't take very kindly to trespassers, and the text explicitly flags them as hostile to strangers. Turning up and having the dwarves get proper shirty about having their solitude disturbed feels quite logical. The problem is that both Port Blacksand and the misanthropic dwarves have an assassin attached to them, which means that if you want to win, you have to do the stupid things even though you know they're stupid. And that is something I find a tad frustrating. I don't mind being made to feel stupid by a book. There's a perverse pleasure in trying a thing you think might be a mistake and being told you're an idiot off the back of it. What I don't like is feeling like I have to be an idiot in order to beat the game. It's not all about the assassins, though. There's a selection of fun encounters along the way that demonstrate Livingstone's eye for a memorable set piece. There's a giant living in one of the towns who definitely doesn't like to be disturbed, so all the locals creep about in their stockings to avoid raising his ire. The business with the pirate ship is great, as is the stuff with the misanthropic dwarves. There's a couple of pleasantly involved fights as well. The dragon on the island feels that bit more dangerous because you can't simply throw down and reduce it to a skill and stamina score. It's a great way to preserve the mystique of a serious threat. I like that there's some monsters where running away is arguably the best call. The Decayer on the island is clearly flagged as a deadly threat, and if you stand and fight you'll be facing a high skill opponent and fighting with your own skill handicapped by the miasma of pestilence that surrounds it. There's a fair few nice little touches like this which help keep the challenges from getting too repetitive, and also helps differentiate some of the monsters from the assassins, who you will be generally stabbing early and often. Even the obligatory shopping trip doesn't feel that bad because there's only a couple of items available for sale, and they're all magic items, which instantly makes them feel much more appealing than trying to work out whether a jam jar or a duvet will be the item you mysteriously need to beat the game. Surely a magic item is always going to be useful. That is certainly the case here. This illustrates one of two different approaches you can take with money in a game book. The first is to treat it as a resource which must be deployed effectively at the start. You often see this in books where the shopping trip happens early doors. In this approach, you start with the cash or get access to cash early, and then it's a question of what you're going to spend it on amongst a cornucopia of options. It's asking you to make judgment calls about the various items on offer. The alternative approach is to treat money as a resource which must be gathered over the course of the adventure in order to obtain some desirable goal later, and this I think is the approach we mostly see in Assassins of Allansia. There's a couple of useful sounding magic items for sale, and if you can't afford them, you're definitely going to want to go back and find some more cash on a future playthrough. This is the approach I personally think is more interesting because it rewards the player for exploring the world thoroughly, and that is good behaviour to shape in a gamebook. If you do the shopping trip early on, then you're potentially creating a disincentive to explore if the player happens to find the items that they've purchased useful. It can reward a conservative playstyle, which I always find a little irritating. I want to feel like poking around in the nooks and crannies of a gamebook is a good thing, not a potential impediment to success. Personally, I think if you want to make use of this design space, the right place to do it is during character creation. Picking stuff off a list always feels more satisfying to me when it's tied to creating my avatar for the game. I always enjoyed choosing my ninja skills in Way of the Tiger, and being able to pick a few special bits of kit at the beginning, it just feels good. And it's funny how small things can make such a huge difference. Tell me that I'm going shopping for adventuring gear, and I instantly start to yawn. Tell me that I can experiment with different builds for my character, and my ears perk up, even though these things are mechanically very similar. I think the key difference is that when you're building a character, there is an assumption that everything you can choose will have at least some utility, even if some options are better than others. When you're staring at a table laden with gaudy knickknacks, the assumption is that some of those inscrutable items will be vital to progress, and some of them will simply be tacky souvenirs to be pillaged from your corpse by a monster that could only be defeated with the I Heart New York shirt you foolishly left on the shelf. Related to this, one thing I don't especially mind in later Ian Livingstone books is his habit of loading you up with useless items and treasure that can be found after almost every encounter. There's always lots of handy things to be found on the adventure, but I do think sprinkling in some useless ones here and there is actually a good thing. You get that little hit of dopamine from being told that you found something. It's a chance to do a bit of world building through the items, and it makes the obscure items which are useful stand out less. And you don't have that thing with the shopping trip whereby you know some of the items are going to be useless and the book is going to make you feel stupid if you pick the wrong one. You're going to be killing monsters and rummaging in cupboards anyway. If some of those items turn out to be just window dressing, that's fine. It's a cleaner design to make it so that every item you can find has some utility in the game, but it can draw attention to the artificiality of the world once you realise that the used tissue you found in the orc's pocket is somehow going to have to prove useful later. Lastly, I do think that the art here is a step up. I'd still prefer something that felt more old school in terms of being penciled or inked illustrations, but I recognise that's partly my nostalgia at play. Younger readers today are going to be exposed to different kinds of art to the art I was exposed to, and it makes all the sense in the world to update the art in fighting fantasy to reflect current tastes. Also, quite a few of my favourite fighting fantasy illustrators are dead. I think there's some very strong work in Assassins of Allansia, but there's also a lot of stuff that betrays the digital origins and also speaks of the tight turnarounds for this kind of project. Some of the pictures don't look quite Finnish, and I guess hastily daubed digital highlights are the modern version of just saying screw it and doing a picture of a treasure chest in an otherwise empty room. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised by Assassins of Allansia. It's frustratingly close to being great, but I still had a good time with it. If you are someone who appreciates gamebooks more as a game than a vector for narrative, it's probably not going to be changing your mind at all about Ian Livingstone as a designer. Most of his issues are still present in Assassins of Allansia. It's too linear, it's barely been play tested, it's filled with small irritating bugs. That said, I think the core premise is so strong that it lifts the rest of the book. I did find it more enjoyable than Blood of the Zombies or Port of Beryl, and it's one I could see myself playing again one day just to enjoy finding all the different weird assassins and be reminded of having had a really good time playing it here. I do think there is an element of lowered expectations by this point. I know what I'm going to get from Ian Livingstone, and the only question is whether he'll be playing more to his strengths or indulging his worst impulses. I think Assassins of Allansia is more playing to his strengths than his weaknesses. I'd also be remiss if I didn't note that part of my continuing fondness for Ian Livingstone books is that they're pretty easy to play on a tight turnaround, and I've had a lot of real life stuff going on in the last month or so. In general, I enjoy getting stuck into something like Steam Highwayman, which provides a huge amount of content, but when time gets short, there's a lot to be said for the classic fighting fantasy approach. Real life does seem to be calming down a bit, touch wood, and I'm going to be making a conscious effort to do a few big meaty game books later this year because variety is the spice of life. But having something simple and old school has been very helpful this week. That is all for this instalment of Fantastic Fights. All being well, we're going to have a little bit of an experimental bonus episode next time out, which I'm very much looking forward to playing. Don't forget, if you want to support this podcast, you can do so by heading over to patreon.com/HJDoom and pledging as little as a single quid to support my nonsense. Thank you, as always, to everyone who puts their hand in their pocket. It really does make a huge difference. If you want to get in touch with me, you can do so by email at hjdoom or retrofun, all one word, at gmail.com, or by following me on Blue Sky at hjdoom. Fantastic Fights is a product of Doom Industries. Thank you very much for listening, take care, and I'll see you soon.